now we see. Yeah.
So poverty and crime in Trinidad and Tobago during the COVID-19 pandemic. This focused more on the effect of the pandemic on the economy and on crime rather than general overviews of criminality in Trinidad. So the informal or shadow economy. The shadow economy constitutes any activity that's not officially reported to the Central Statistical Office. This definition echoes that of Smith, who defines the informal economy as market-based production of goods and services, whether legal or illegal, that escapes detection in the official estimates of GDP. So this will include both criminal activity, illegal activity, as well as, well, there's illegal activity that harms society, such as human trafficking and drug trafficking. Then there's illegal activity, well, gray area activity, where Venezuelan migrants and refugees will be employed illegally on construction sites and in the informal economy, and well, which contributes to GDP, and it's not necessarily a bad thing to the economy. The size of the shadow economy in Trinidad and Tobago is estimated to be between 26% to 33% of our GDP. That's estimated according to an Inter-American Development Bank study. That the study looked at different metrics such as electricity consumption and cash flow in the economy. So it up to 1/3 of the economy is off the books, and this again would include illegal activity as well as well, your doubles vendor, your street food vendor, small and micro enterprises that are not registered and are not paying VAT, which is substantial amount of the economy, farmers and small farmers and such. The United Nations UNHCR office in Trinidad and Tobago reported a 600% increase in food aid requests from migrants. So how I approached trying to discern what is going on in the shadow economy, a huge percentage of the labor force of the shadow economy since the Venezuelan refugee crisis has been refugees and Venezuelan labor. There's also a small number of Cubans, Nigerians, and other nationalities, but majority Venezuelans. And the UNHCR office registered a 600% increase in food aid from asylum seekers and refugees. So extrapolating, well, it would be incorrect to say there's a 600% increase in unemployment or poverty in the informal economy, but we can see there's a devastating effect because of the pandemic. The estimated number of migrants is around 20,300 according to UNHCR. These are asylum seekers, those who have already gotten their refugee status with the United Nations, and the vast majority of these refugees who are of productive age who came in seeking jobs. Trinidad and Tobago continues to receive an outflow of Venezuelan refugees and migrants. 85.9% of UNHCR's, that's United Nations High Commission on Refugees, persons of concern are Venezuelan, and the vast majority of these would have been employed in informal sector, construction jobs, restaurants, vending, informal activities. Looking at officials' data now, retrenchment of employees in 2020 increased 80% over 2019 figures. So 2,744 persons were retrenched in 2020, 879 from the real estate and business services, 562 from manufacturing, 527 from hotels and restaurants. Are you still hearing me?
Yes, yes.
So the limit of this data is that according to the legislation here, retrenchment, the data collected only covers when employer proposes to terminate the services of 5 or more workers for reason of redundancy, they shall give formal notice in writing to the Minister of Labor or union. So those are the larger established enterprises, the larger businesses and industries, which would not, well, it doesn't touch the around 33% of the economy, the informal shadow economy, and it wouldn't touch small and micro enterprises. Um, five, so if somebody terminated 2 or 3 workers, it wouldn't be caught by this statistic. So the government of Trinidad and Tobago did offer salary relief to persons who lost their jobs or were laid off or were temporarily. Some workers are on furlough where they're not being paid and they may get back their job in a few months. So the salary relief grant offers $1,500 or approximately $215 for those who lost their jobs or source of income from May 1st, 2021. That's when our roughly when our state of emergency for the latest COVID lockdown started, and $1,142 for those who suffered a similar fate from May 8th due to the lockdown. Over 30,000 people applied for the salary relief grants in May of 2021. And of course, this data will be limited by persons who know how to use a computer, have access to a computer or internet. So with a labor force of approximately 600,000 in Trinidad and Tobago, 30,000 applicants represents 5% roughly of the total labor force. On the crime data now. In the year 2020, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service noticed a 23.3% drop in serious crime compared to the same period in 2019. There was a 32% drop in robberies, 11.5% drop in fraud, 27.3% drop in vehicle larceny, 26.2% drop in murder, 43.2% drop in kidnapping. My analysis would be that there's a drop in opportunities for criminality, which cause a drop in crime. So, for example, many businesses close down, so there are less businesses to rob, and the ones, if the economy is locked down for 2 and 3 months at a time, there are no cash registers to rob. There's no transportation of funds of goods going on in many sectors, so there are less opportunities. Plus, criminals themselves may be concerned about the pandemic and decide to stay home and behave themselves. So while with our new police commissioner, Gary Griffith, we had a small increase in the effectiveness of the police service, and well, he has attempted to make reforms. I would say the 23.3% drop is heavily due to the pandemic, not to some miracle worked by the police service. Increase in domestic violence, it's estimated that there was a 13.6% increase in domestic violence reports. So remember, a report will be those who get to the police station. There are many women who may not, women, children, men who may not bother to go to the police station. In 2020, 46 women were killed in Trinidad and Tobago, and 21 of them were in domestic violence situations, representing 13% of homicides this year. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service also reported that of 745 people reported missing for 2020, 416 were women. Critical issue, many domestic violence shelters were shut down during the pandemic, and and even prior to the pandemic, they were facing dwindling resources. And there's urgent need, as somebody who has worked in that NGO space with battered women's shelters for 7 years, there's urgent need for funding for the shelters in Trinidad and across the Caribbean. And the model I've seen with work in Trinidad is that the Coalition Against Domestic Violence and the Rape Crisis Society all share offices and resources. So they don't just focus on domestic violence alone. They may deal with rape victims, some issues of human trafficking, but so it's sharing of resources to deal with violence against women in general. So in conclusion, the informal economy is devastated. informal economy has been devastated, um, especially amongst vulnerable groups such as migrants and refugees, based on the 600% increase in food aid registered by the UNHCR. The legislation, the Retrenchment and Severance Benefits Act, number 23 of 1985, limits the official reporting retrenchment data to the formalized business sector, as we've seen before. So some of the data we're getting out of central bank is not really a reality on the ground with unemployment. Over 30,000 applied for salary relief. That's 5% of the labor force. Serious crime is down, but domestic violence has increased by 13.6%. And the research for this presentation is hampered due to lack of up-to-date surveys and quality data on the informal economy. Again, it's hard to expect a survey in the middle of a pandemic where we cannot go house to house. So thank you for your time. If you have any questions.
Jonathan, thank you so much. I have a quick question for you. And in the interest of time, if you can make it short and sweet. It would appear that the pandemic acted like a crime control measure based on the stats that you've provided. Now, this would be an excellent opportunity for the police to start strategizing how to maintain the level of crime where it is right now. But given the opportunities once the pandemic is over, what do you think is going to happen?
Well, in my opinion, having done some criminal defense work for the last 7 years, I would say there's a risk of increased criminal activity once the pandemic is over because so many people have lost their jobs. And as we know, especially with youth, when there is poverty and there are these pressures, they will go to a gang leader for help. And it's like a job to them. They rob, kill, and steal for a living. So there's a serious risk if we don't address poverty. And it's like if you remember in the Afghanistan and Iraq wars when the US would send a surge of troops, you may deal with the violence during that surge, but the problem of the Taliban is still there. It didn't go away as we see now. So I do agree, we need to strategize, and in Trinidad's case, try to detain some of these big drug lords and crime leaders and make a dent in crime, which we hope that they achieve.
So essentially, it's not only a problem that's faced by the police, but it's a problem that the government in and of itself has to address, and that's the issue of poverty. Because if I hear you clearly, you're saying that the levels where crime is right now, we shouldn't expect crime to remain at that level because, okay.
Yeah, it's a seasonal thing. The criminals are home avoiding, a pandemic, and well, there are less businesses to rob. But given the level of poverty, and well, unless we would have to have an economic recovery plan, which is an entirely separate issue. But there is a risk of increased criminal activity if we don't execute things properly.
Okay, Daniel, I have a question for you. Again, I have to thank you for that presentation. I learned a lot about the things going on in Haiti. Mm-hmm. But it would appear that, based on your presentation, that